If you know anybody that's experiencing dementia or has experienced dementia, will you put your hand up? That is amazing. I've asked that question in the BRE, and the same kind of figures apply. It's an incredible epidemic. It's not just happening in this country, it's happening globally. And it's highly likely it will happen to you, unless we kind of work around it. Okay, so my name is Dr. Robert, and if you know anything about the Beatles, anybody know the Beatles, heard of the Beatles? Revolver album, Dr. Robert. He was a psychiatrist in New York City, and he used to prescribe uppers and downers to the stars. So you are the stars today, and I'm giving you some uppers and some downers. So take your medicine and like it or not. What I'm going to tell you about is work that I've done with several people in Liverpool, working with people who are living with dementia and their experiences, and a process called a living lab, where we get together 150 people who are experiencing dementia and come up with solutions with the kind of issues that they are addressing. I wanted to go to the toilet before. Behind this screen there is a disabled toilet. The door is locked. I could not go to that toilet. I walked across there to the other side. There's a toilet, it's about 5 floors down into the ground. I just about managed to negotiate that. And then coming back, if you look around some of these stands, there's a trip. Is that deliberate or accidental? Anyway, I tripped over it. So be aware of trips. Be aware of black mats. People with dementia, if they come across a black mat, they think it's a hole. They stumble, they won't step into it. Think of any building that you go into, that invariably there's a black mat, especially in banks, and I've really got it in for banks, really. Have you ever been into a bank with a toilet? Just mention the kind of place for women and changing babies' clothes. No toilets in banks. You've got to go to the nearest pub, to change. It's ridiculous, really. So think about these institutions that are not responding to do with people with dementia. Now, I was born in 1951. I was taught computing on a giant IBM mainframe computer, probably as big as this room, and I'm completely illiterate. I've got an iPhone, and all I can do is send emails and go on Safari. I like Safari. I can sit on my sofa and I can find examples of all sorts of architecture, all kinds of things. I won't name the kind of things I can find because you might be a bit shocked, but Safari is a wonderful kind of thing for designers. So what I'm coming to is, which button do I press on this device to change the images? Thank you, Julia.
You can press one of these arrows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
Would you like me to move the slides for you?
That would be great. Yeah. We've got to learn when we engage. We've got to help each other. It's really important. And I'm getting very, accustomed to relying upon the help and assistance of different people. Joe Forster, for example, helped me come from Liverpool today, and it was important. To get from Euston Station to the Dockland Light Railway is a bit of a job. For somebody who's living on the edge of dementia. I've had a dementia test. Anybody had a dementia test? Yeah, it's challenging, isn't it? The doctor gives you, so many numbers, and then 5 minutes later says, well, give me those numbers back. Or he says, well, who's the most famous female prime minister of the 20th century? Now that is a challenge, unless you can remember Margaret Thatcher, and that's all you kind of, what's the answer to that question? But there are lots of other trick questions. So be prepared for the trick questions that are coming in your direction. So what we're looking at here is myself and Bill Halsell, my associate, and we've written three books about design for dementia, and I'll pass these leaflets around. Joe, could you just pass them around? This is the plug for the book. The third one, the red one, was sponsored by the RIBA, and it was an international study of architecture in Japan, Holland, and Finland. The other two, one is a design guide, and one is a series of research projects. So the most interesting one is the international comparisons. And we got funding from the RIBA, £10,000 to do the final guide. During that time, I met some Japanese psychologists were talking about where dementia actually starts. And they were talking about the left-hand kind of lobe is where it kind of starts and spreads through the body. How they explained that to me in Japanese, I really don't know, but I think they did like sign language. Now this here, we're not doctors of medicine, by the way. We're humble architects. We don't know about the medicine of dementia, but they're the things that people have said to us. The feeling of being lonely, being unsure, being very anxious, being lost, being unclear, being quite aggressive at times, confused and agitated. That's the message that people have said to us working in these living labs. And I think the question is, how can we respond as designers to those kind of issues? So we've got objectives. How do we work in neighbourhoods? How do we gain insight from people living with dementia about their environment? And this living lab is a process that started in Belgium and came to Britain, and a number of people in Merseyside and Manchester have used it. Some of the techniques we've used, like photo cue cards. So we take photographs of a particular environment, centre of Liverpool. We print the photographs off, and people comment upon the nature of the environment and what's not working. We also, so these are all photographs of streets around the city centre of Liverpool. You could all take your own photographs of city centres and streets that you know and highlight the kind of the problems. Are they age friendly? Are they dementia friendly? Are they children friendly? I think they all show up. And probably one of the most crucial places is the threshold. When you enter a building, is there a black mat there, or is there some obstruction in the way? So this technique is the cue cards, and the other technique is quite an interesting one to do with working with sand trays. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, on a one-to-one basis would work with a tray of sand and play in it with objects. We've done that with groups of people, and it's quite enjoyable. It provokes a conversation, and it's worth exploring. Jung developed it because when he was disoriented, he used to go to the edge of a river, and he would play in the sand and would move rocks around, and he would create with the stones villages his own patterns in the sand, and he would do that as a form of self-therapy. We've developed that as a group form of therapy. So that's about the living lab. Carry on, yeah. There are more cue cards. And then, what places are actually friendly? The three books. People want to live in their own home as far as possible. And that starts to throw up issues to do with how can we adapt the existing housing stock and the neighbourhood for people to continue to live in those places. So what you see here is three people working with a model of a dementia-friendly house. The actual building has been built in Watford by the BRE and a number of other agencies. There's the cue cards, and you can just see the top of the sand tray. It's kind of got, it's painted blue. Does that represent the water or the sky? And then the objects are placed in it. It's got sensory things to do with smell. We might play bird song, in the background. We might have sweets from the seaside, all things that go with the senses. There's a book called The Eyes of the Skin, like a classic architectural reference, and it reminds us that we have actually got five senses. Certain stages in life, sometimes our senses are reduced. How can we enhance that process of loss of senses? That image there, 30 years ago, we were involved with a housing cooperative of elderly people. So the basis of what we're doing now does go back quite a long way, and that project is still kind of standing along with a number of other housing cooperatives in and around the city. This one was prepared especially. What might a pavement or a street or a boulevard that's got transportation, trees, a zone for pedestrians, people with white sticks, mobility spaces, what might be a special place that would cut through the city. I mean, I can remember in Liverpool when I was quite young, we used to cycle to the nearest park to play football. That was really special. Now, 17 years ago, I had an episode which involved crashing a car, and I don't drive any longer. I walk everywhere. So there's like a positive gain. If you can reverse I don't like the word disability. There's something the opposite of that, which is about creativity and not being, disabled. So walking for me is a very special thing to do. To walk around cities is really special. And then finally, this one is the inside of the dementia house that the BRE, Loughborough University, John Moores University and Halsall Lloyd have built as a prototype house in Watford. These photographs I've taken myself really to highlight the point of the importance of green in cities. Now, they're not big parks. The bottom left-hand one is a hanging basket. When I was in hospital, one of the hospitals, the nurses took me to a garden centre, picked like bulbs and seeds and made a hanging basket. That made an impact on me. So when I went home, I started to make hanging baskets. But rows of pots in front of the building, and men in sheds is kind of interesting. Men in greenhouses are another kind of thing, really. And in the middle, there's an image of a class that I've set up, therapeutic arts class, in a mental recovery space where people are learning to use art therapeutically during the week. And next to the hanging basket, there's a beautiful handmade archway out of driftwood and a gate. It's actually down in Devon. Water, I think water is very therapeutic, and water and greenery go together. So that's all I would like to say, and just thank you for listening. And I think it's a wonderful event that you've brought together today to get all these people together. Thank you.